For many people, when they think of Peugeot, they think of the retro 80s, some of the hatchbacks and saloons that came out of that era, and some of the awesome icons, as well as its rallying heritage. But unfortunately, during the 2000s, they lost sight of that. However, I think I found one car that's super rare, and one car that you probably won't see much at all, but still very cheap to buy. What is that car? Back in the day when Peugeot were making classic cars like these, which were very cool, they were also making pepper and salt shakers, and probably a lot of people didn't know that, much like Mitsubishi make aircon units.
Oh my god!
Well, recently Peugeot have been making really good cars. I love the new 508, I even love the new 308. Both cars look excellent. I'm really excited to see where the future goes. Even the RCZ back a few years back was a great car. So what were they making back in the older days? What was making it so tough? The car in question in today's video is the Peugeot 407 Coupe, a car that is rare and very sleek, and I love the design of it. Now, specifically not talking about the normal 407, which is ugly in my opinion, and has that horrendous estate version, which they also made as well. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the Coupe only in this video. And the Coupe came at a time that was a rare breed for sort of premium coupes that not many people were really into buying at the time because they were expensive competitors. Some even claim that the Peugeot 407 looks like a Nissan Silvia from some angles, given its sort of refreshing coupe, cool, sleek look, which I sometimes have to agree with. Now you're probably asking, Ben, why are you making a video on the Peugeot 407? It wasn't really a great era. Well, I think the 407 came out of a bad era, and that's why I want to jump into it. Obviously, its predecessor being the 406 looks a bit rough around the edges, and I think it was still pretty cool for a rarity. And now you could consider the 407 a pretty big rarity, not forgetting both cars were styled by Pininfarina, which makes this car even more special when you think about it. The 407 is not a sports car, and it's not a hatchback, much like a lot of the successful Peugeots were with the 106 or the 205. This is a GT car, and I think the fact it's styled by Pininfarina, the fact it's so rare, and the fact I love the big xenon lights, the big grille is awesome. As for interior, it was pretty well equipped. Now, yes, it was a Peugeot, and it still had the basic interior of a 407, but it was a bit more luxury, and you could actually probably fit two people in the back if you wanted to. I actually quite like the interior of the Peugeot 407. Moving on to performance with the 407, and I really like the fact that the Coupe came with a 3-litre V6, producing just around 205 horsepower, which is quite a lot for a Peugeot of its age. But this is a big reason why people didn't buy it. Obviously, the standard engine in the 407 was boring and slow anyway, so I think it did need that pep up, but it's unfortunate because the market just didn't demand it. And it had a bit of grunt as well. Other reasons why I believe this car is a special rarity is down to its competitors. Now, given its main competitor was the Renault Laguna Coupe, but it came out a bit later in 2009, and the most beautiful probably car that came out in this time was also the Alfa Romeo Barrera in 2006, and then its German competitors, the Mercedes CLK Coupe, which was a lot more expensive at the time and more powerful, on top of the BMW 3 Series, which is probably the most desirable car back in around 2006 and 2007 for its good looks. So I think when you look at its competitors, there is a lot of choice to go from, and maybe more people wanted those German options and didn't buy the Peugeot as a result. Like I said, the Laguna was probably its biggest competitor, but it was a bit late to the party, and again, another car that you could make a video on because it was so rare. Prices for those are only £2,500 for maybe one or two. I think somewhere along the line, Peugeot definitely took a dip in its cars that it produced, and I'm not really quite sure why that was. There was some good retro ones, but overall in the early 2000s and sort of early 2010s, there were some pretty rough ones, I'd say, that just weren't capturing what Peugeot's essence was, in my opinion, which was really cool cars when they really come down to it. They can make some great cars, as we've seen with the 205, or is that just more iconic? Let me know. But with the 407, I think it was special because it was a coupe that had aesthetics and a car that we hadn't really seen before from Peugeot. And even though people might not see it like the way I do believe this could be a future classic. Now that you've been given the stats, I presume you want to buy one of these special Peugeots. Well, and I looked at how many are left. It's really tough because you only get the 407 and the estate, not really showing the coupe, so that's a problem. However, there is a Peugeot 407 owners club, so they might be able to tell you about where the numbers are, which is good. Prices are only for two cars on Auto Trader worth £3,500. No more, no less really. They sort of sat in that bracket. And I think that's pretty good for something that's a rarity with only two available for sale, and given that most might have been scrapped at this point. Now, if you do decide to go out and buy a Peugeot 407 Coupe, there's a couple of things you might want to know first. Reliability, what to look for? Well, the car generally is pretty reliable. It never had any major incidents, and Peugeot was pretty good with that. However, when it comes to technology side of things, they definitely lacked quite significantly compared to its German competitors. So just be careful for electronic gadgets in the car that might have gone wrong, given it's probably well over 15 years. To round off this video, I want to just say that Peugeot has made a step in the right direction over the last 5 years or so, which means they're making a lot better cars, I think, which means I think they'll be bringing back a bit of the essence that they used to have. Obviously, the RZZ was a spectacular success, as people loved the concept, and then they made the real car. As for some Gran Turismo Vision cars, well, that remains to be seen, and some of them seem to be already in some kind of pre-production, which is awesome to see. I think the 407 is definitely worth a look if you're into cheap, potential future classics, and even just a good-looking car that's a coupe. Hope you've enjoyed this Cars with Ben video. Don't forget to subscribe if you like car content.